Get started. Everybody, good afternoon, good day for those who are joining online, and for those that are here in Ithaca, it's a gorgeous day out there. Please let's try to go and enjoy the sunshine. You don't know how many of these days you're gonna have. Yeah. So, my distinct honor, before I introduce our speaker, let me just remind you our non-technology policy. So you can put away your cell phones and your phones for this 1 hour. We'll break that. So it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Professor Arie is the Associate Dean of Graduate Program. He's also the Associate Professor in Agribusiness at Zamorano University in Honduras. Some of you might know stand here. So people online can see me. Cornell has a very long established relationship with Zamorano University. In fact, every year we get about 10 students from Zamorano. You know them in the room today. So friends, we have some from Zamorano. Thank you for being here. Professor Sanders has more than 3 decades of experience with small-scale agriculture in the value chain development, gender inclusion across Central America. He holds a BSc and a master's degree in development economics from Wageningen University, the Netherlands, and he holds a PhD in rural sociology from Penn State University. In fact, here and I were talking earlier about this transition from development economics to development sociology. It's such a pleasure to hear somebody speak with authority and experience on a topic that's near and dear to most of us here. He's going to be giving a talk on contesting good farming, social capital, technology, and identity among Honduran smallholders. Over to you, Professor Sanders. Okay. Good afternoon.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My name is Arie. I'm Dutch, so my English accent also sounds as Dutch. I hope you can understand me. If not, I can repeat what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about Honduras and agriculture. I'm working now for more than 3 decades in Central America, especially in Honduras, working normally with innovations projects and state UCDATIS in Central America. And I'm going to tell a little bit about our experience. And this is the overview. Last project we did was with Penn State, and it was about the management of pesticides with small farmers. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the challenges. Then I will explain a little bit about the innovation lab of dealing with the problem, the challenge. Then I give you the analytical approach. I developed a disappointment index. I give a social interpretation why we are so disappointed. And I will give you some kind of policy implications what we can discuss after the talk. Pesticide use is huge in all the world, but also in Central America, especially in Honduras. We are one of the largest users of pesticides, and it's very critical. I mean, it's very difficult to eliminate pesticides in tropical agriculture. Not only with potatoes, I'm going to talk about potato production, but also banana and other kinds of commodity crops. If you don't use pesticides, you will have crop loss, and that has a huge economic impact. However, there are also a lot of challenges with use of pesticides, especially in a setting where people don't apply in the correct way. So there's a lot of environmental challenges and also a lot of health challenges. You can see the pesticide use of Honduras in the last 20 years. It is skyrocketing, and we're still importing a lot of those pesticides, and the use is increasing. There's a lot of strategies. I guess Cornell is also working on this. You can do a lot of things. You can have resistant varieties. There's a lot of work on that subject, including using GMO. Of course, you can use mechanical weeding in the case of you'd like to reduce herbicides. You can use integrated pest management. There's a huge project with long 30, 40 years trying to introduce IPM with smallholders, but has been very challenging. And you can also use kind of decision support. And that's going to explain you today. I'm going to explain how we try to introduce a decision tool, very simple one, to reduce the use of fungicides in potato farm. This is the project context. The project was in Western Honduras. Potato production is huge, very important. People survive this potato versus cash crop. Main challenge is late blight of Arie disease, potato disease, has a very huge impact on the quality of the potato. So you have a lot lost if you don't control it. So people use a lot of fungicides. And normally what they're doing, a cycle of potato production is about 90, 100 days. So every 3-4 days, they just apply. Independent if it's fungicide or not. It's just spraying by calendar. And that is what we're trying to change with this project. Because at the end, you have a high production cost, you have to buy all those fungicides, health risk, and of course you have environmental impact. This is, we got some data, direct data from small farmers. You can see the 20 farmers we visit during the whole potato cycle. You can see it every 4 days. They will apply fungicides. The project we did was together with Spanish States. It was an first emerging threat to crop innovation. It was an innovation lab. Worked together with them and the SIP in Peru and Zamorano and local associations. Our goal was how we can reduce the use of fungicides in potato production. And the strategy we applied was using farm field schools and working together with small farmers during the potato cycle and trying to establish a kind of social innovation, social learning. So we were in discussion every week, every 2 weeks with farmers, analyzing what was going on in the field and if the disc we're trying to introduce was useful or not. This is the famous disc. It's just a paper thing. It's linked to rain. You know, fungicides increase if there's a lot of raining, and by using this disc, you can just check if there was a lot of rain last week, do I apply or not apply the fungicide. By using this disc, you can reduce the fungicide application with 20–30%. So that's about $150 you can save by using this disc. $150 is a lot of money for a small farmer. So we thought this will be a great idea. We've already tested Peru and Ecuador by SIP, and now what we're trying to do was to check if the disc was useful in our context and discussing with farmer field schools the use of the disc and trying to explain how efficient it will be. So what we did, we established 6 farmer field schools. A farmer field school takes about 20 weeks. That's the potato cycle. Every 2 weeks we get together. And we have about 12, 15 small farmers in a farm field school. We also set up some experimental design. We have 6 plots where we're showing to the farmers if using this, you will use less fungicides. We did an whole control trial with varieties, disc, and the traditional application of fungicides. During 20 weeks, we were working with them, a lot of discussion, and we were very hopeful in the beginning. However, after 10 weeks, people were not very convinced by using this disc. We had the data. We were sure that the disc was very efficient. You can reduce with 20–30% your fungicide costs. Also, your health will be better. And there will be no loss in yields. There will be some kind of loss, but not that much. But in the beginning, we were very hopeful. After 20 weeks, we were disappointed. And after 20 weeks, almost nobody was using the disc. And then is what happens. And what happens, you can analyze it. So now the PhD is coming in. you need some kind of theory to analyze the problem, the challenge that we had. We can do it just from an economic side, be very rational, analyzing why people are not using them, the fungicides of the disc, I'm still using the fungicides. You can do checking farm size, maybe gender, maybe education, all those kind of factors. You make all those nice models to understand why are people not adopting the technology. I think it's very useful, but in this context, not enough. Of course, you can go to the political economy, being a little bit more critical. Maybe the bad seller of fungicides is the cause of this. Maybe the market pressure, they are squeezed by the market, low prices, you have to survive. So you can also be very critical about what's going on. I love those kinds of theories, but I thought at the end, it's not very useful if you're working with those farmers. You can blame someone, the structure, but now what? So what we did, this is very buzzword at this moment, is the assemblage thinking. In trying to link structure with the daily life of farmers. So we use the assemblage thing, and the nice thing is that human and non-human get agency. I mean, the farmer has agency, he can make decisions, but also the fungicide, the technician, the discord, they've all agency, and they all influence on our behavior. So there's nobody's more important. There's no big structure that decides what you're doing, like in the neo-Marxist way of thinking. What you're doing here is everything is flat. One is important, and someone is more important. That depends on the relationship. So using this kind of assemblage thinking, and this makes it a little bit different how we analyze it. It's just analyzing what is going on daily basis. Who's interacting? What kind of discord exists? Who is the farmer talking to? What happened in the field when he take a decision to apply or not apply fungicides? So this is a little bit more an ethnographic way of analyzing it and taking into account a lot of other aspects. So what we did after our disappointments is going back to the field, and we interviewed about 22 farmers and 8 stakeholders, trying to understand why we are not that successful. Starting the disc Arie. So we show up at Intibucá. We're making those nice field experiments. One is a disc, one is without the disc. This is in the field of a farmer. We started testing. And we know also the results of our tests, reduction of 20 to 30%. However, people are very skeptical. They didn't trust us. They just saw a leaf, a yellow leaf, with a light spot. The first thing what they do, buy fungicide and apply, including our field trials. So the data was quite well, but we knew that he applied fungicides in the field trial. So people are too skeptical. How can we change the skeptics? And then the rain started. Rain is a very important agent in crop production, especially if you talk about fungicides. So what we saw, the rain started, we had much more fungicides than last year. And that makes people uneasy, stressful. So what they tried, they saw the plants were affected, impacted, and so they're applying again all the fungicides to control it, because they're just scared. Because it's also based on the experience they had before. I mean, you lose your crop totally if you don't apply those kind of fungicides. And this is a famous concept, a little bit based on Bourdieu, good farming and Burton. And we also talk with those farmers asking, what is a good farmer? And a good farmer is someone with a clean spot, clean field, not clean plot. Having high yields, using some kind of technology. And that concept of a good farmer has a huge influence how farmers behave. especially if you talk about fungicides, because if your plot is infected, that can go to another plot. Your neighbor is concerned, your neighbor is watching you. Your neighbor knows exactly what's going on in your plot, because your performance can in fact impact their plot. So there's a lot of talking, but I would say gossiping, but there's a lot of talking about other people's plots, and this defines a good farmer. And if this is the way you think, just like the United States, big ag is good, etc., it's very difficult to change that. And the same problem, the same challenge we had. Also the markets. It's not that we cannot take the market in account. I mean, credit package. If I want access to credit, the people who borrow you the money, you want to be assured that you pay it back. So they give you a technical package that is seeds and all the pesticides you need. They don't want to give you credit if you don't use all those pesticides. So that's a huge impact. There's no extension work anymore in Honduras. We skipped that in the 80s, 90s, last decade. It's the structural adjustment programs. So the knowledge people get is from sellers of pesticides. You go to the agronomia, we call it a local shop, ag shop, where you get your stuff, and they will explain exactly what you need, and they give you all those chemicals. So they are very important agents in sustaining the assemblies of pesticide use. And then you have the risk of yield loss. Having a nice plot, there's no nice plants growing the right size, having good yield, they're all important. They all influence in your way of thinking, in your way of producing. However, not everything is negative. There are some people interested. We were all one of the farm field schools in the women group, and they are discussing now for 20 years, more than 25 years, about be a little bit more ecological. So they already changed the mindset. And it's then we had some hope. They were using a little bit more than disc, and also when we left, they're still using the disc. So there is some kind of hope. We had a positive experience with our disc, but always, if there's bad harvest in the near future, they will not use the disc. They're going to start the spermicide again. The lessons learned of this coming up is a technology, very cheap, just costs 20 cents to print this disc. Tested by the scientists in Peru, tested in the field in Peru and Ecuador. We tested in Honduras. We did also in Guatemala. It was a wonderful idea, but technology is not the issue. It is an issue, but not the only issue. You have to look beyond the only technology. And if you go, if you try to introduce those kind of technology, you have to take another way of thinking. I think our biggest mistake was not to discuss more with people who are selling the pesticides. Trying to inform them about the disc and how they can help us maybe to change the opinion in the assemblies of pesticide use in maybe using the disc at least you can reduce for 20 to 30% your costs and use of pesticides. You have to change the limitation. If the good farmer is someone who apply a lot of fungicides, you have to redefine the definition of good farmer. And that's a long, you don't change that in 1 year. It's a long-term challenge. And it's a little bit more practical. How can you decouple credits, finance, with the use of all those agrochemicals? I'm not talking only about banking, there's also producer associations who provide credit to small farmers. They are established by themselves, but also they have all discourse mixing credit with the use of all those agrochemicals. How can you change that? And I think the areas of the field schools are a great tool. I think they can be very successful trying to explain and working together with small farmers, introducing technology. But you cannot stay only with the farm field school. You have to introduce or connect with other partners or other actors in that assemblage. Recognizing invisibles, youth were interested, also women, we did that. And looking for alternatives. I mean, the main challenge we have, the risk is one thing, there's not much more going on. There's not that much research on how to reduce pesticide use in tropical settings with small farmers. I mean, our extension system and research system is totally broken. So the only way to come up with new ideas was before with USAID is those future innovation labs. But they are now gone. Conclusion. Reducing pesticides, very important. Demand is increasing, but you need more than only technical tools. You must align the technology, the way of thinking, with the social, economic, technical context, including market forces, very important. And trying to have some kind of influence in the assemblage of pesticides and how you can change the way of thinking about pesticide use. So there's much more than only working with small farmers. Do a lot of, let's say, social work in that assemblage to change the mindset of the people in the potato production areas. And this was my experience about potato reduction and the introduction of technology.
Thank you, Professor Sanders. We have quite a bit of time for Q&A and discussion. And if you allow, we'll maybe open it a little bit more broader to just beyond this particular technology, but it's really about farmer use of modern technologies. And yeah. So yes, if you can raise your hand, introduce yourself and make your question.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to speaking to us. My name is Cameron. I'm a second year MHA, that's Health Administration Masters. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the social implications, because I know a lot of the big things about reducing pesticides is that it comes with the weakness of, like, when you mention GMOs as an alternative, people get a little icky because, even though we don't quite understand the long-term implication or effects of GMOs on the body and whatnot, people often get kind of icked out about that part. So if you could speak to more about that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I did mention. I don't do that. Corn in Central America, you've got reduce BT, and it has to be very effective. Adaptation also of GMO corn by small farms is not that high. You find only in large producers, but it's quite expensive. Seeds are quite expensive. It's just a kind of strategy. I don't think it's the best strategy, but also thank you. Yes.
Hi. Sorry for any disruption, and I apologize for my ignorance about a lot of Honduras in general, which is what I wanted to look up. But a lot of your presentation centered on how we can convince farmers to kind of adopt this technology. But I also understand that Honduras has a deep history of colonization. There are many ethnic groups there. So I just wonder, like, what are the alternatives traditional knowledge keepers of the region might be suggesting instead? What are we doing to bridge the gaps of trust in convincing them rather than just sharing that empirical data?
No, it's a great question. I totally agree with that. The 50s, 60s, the last century is not that traditional. It's not like the rule of Ecuador or Bolivia. And the big challenge we have, the whole production, all the input coming from abroad, seems not quality we had. All the seeds from abroad, including from the Netherlands, big support from the Netherlands. And what they tried together with the seed setup in Taiwan to create a little bit more focus on the local context of that was not very successful. Creating new varieties is very costly, take a lot of time. And from the beginning of it, we are more than 100 days. In the moment you have a production cycle of 100 days. More pesticides. So people like to produce potatoes with a short cycle, 90 days. They only come from a plot. How to discolonize these? I don't have a good answer. I think at the end we have to together with farmers, we have to redesign that. It's a very intensive production, a real small area, and there's no crop rotation at all. Every year, many countries that's not allowed at all. And then you have people are renting land, so they don't invest in land. Also time extraction of the COVID. There are a lot of dynamics that is not very helpful to make it more sustainable. I think the redesign, introduction and introducing the volatile crops, and day farming, maybe some kind of permaculture, that's all doable. And I think desirable. But again, short-term interest is having a harvest, so I can pay my debt and I can send my kids to school. And that transition, I think that's the biggest challenge we have. And that takes, I think, about 5 or 10 years. My understanding that Joe Biden, a couple of years ago, provided money for farmers in the United States to cover that transition. It's very difficult to do by yourself because of crop law. And you have to make some kind of investment. There's more positive things to tell about coffee. They are more successful with short-term crops like potato or horticulture. It's a huge challenge. I don't have the answer, but it's.
If I can follow up on that, it sounds like the problem is that potatoes, right? Like it sounds like the potatoes are the issue and that we're importing the seeds from other places. They're not native to the land. Maybe that's like, maybe
No, I think
I'm not sure.
No, I think importing all that seeds is a high cost. You can produce them locally, but you don't have the capacity.
Sure. I mean, I just,
I want to move to, I want to give anything out to other people, so we'll go to the next question.
Hi, my name is Maria Jose. My question, well, I have several questions. One is like, when we're talking about small scale farming, like what acreage or like hectares we're talking, and if they were commercial growers. And then the other part was like in the ECAs, in the farmer field schools, you said they discourage like then 10 weeks into the farmer field school, like to stop using the disc. But I was wondering if they still compare like with the experimental or demonstration parcel or the plot that they had, if that was successful, if they had some recalling at the end of saying like, maybe I didn't implement it in my plot, but what with the as a group, they kind of worked.
Last question, those here, it's large, we're talking about I guess most farmers have less than 1 acre, because it's quite 1 hectare and then you have all the other costs. So they're very small farmers. And the plots, again, also answering, the plots are small. No vegetation in your own plot. That makes also difficult. Still, we have the process of pesticization in Honduras means but all those people.
Hello, thank you so much for giving this lecture today. I really enjoyed it. My name is Anjali. I'm an undergraduate student studying public health, and I'm very interested in the reasons why people engage or don't engage with interventions. So my question for you is, now that you've identified that there are social barriers to uptake of this disc, either individual risk or belief that it won't be effective or fear of loss, how is your team persisting into the future with social interventions? Are you by chance working with community organizations? Are you passing it on to another team? And what do you see as the future for doing more social work to progress the future of this intervention?
No, definitely. I'm working with a women group in Intibucá 10 years now, and we are still working with that. And if I have new projects, always with them. So there's I visit every. So I know. I don't want to say I know exactly what's going on there. We are highly engaged there. All the participants of the farm field schools belong to associations, and we know them for many years. So again, the need for a little bit more social work is there. And I think the most important issue is just doing talks and a little bit education is not enough. Capacity building sounds, oh, we have to educate the people. It's not, they are over-educated already, I guess. It's just about the way of thinking, way of using. And I mean, and that's born during the last 25 years ago. I guess, again, 25 years ago, the use of fungicides was not that huge. Still, there were rotation schemes, but there's so many people not producing potato, and there's not enough land available. That makes it the issues you have to resolve. I don't know if I answered your question. I economics and sociology for that. We make also nice economic models and age and education is a very important factor of adoption kind of technology. But at the end, going on. But we get the data farm in Honduras, and he did contract farming. So the contract farmers were included in our trial. And I think the largest mistake we made not to convince him about trying to start a more sustainable agricultural system. But in the end, if you go to the supermarket, you want a nice potato, and yeah, you grow for it.
Okay. Hi, my name is Arie. I am a junior. I'm studying global development. The question that I had was that recently have been seeing a lot of like a strong advocacy for organic farming, trying to advocate to remove the use of chemicals. But then when you look at the climate change and the problems farmers are experiencing, sometimes I doubt that that is going to be successful. So my question is that, do you see that movement being successful, like cutting off all the chemicals? And if yes, what do you think are the trade-offs, especially when farmers are struggling with the effects of climate change?
This is the worst words I can use, depends. It's quite successful because the market demands some kind of coffee, organic coffee, and people buy those products. A staple crop like potato for the local domestic market, you need people who want to pay a premium for that product. Or you can make a decision as a supermarket, I only sell organic potatoes, and this is what we have in the market. There's no alternative. This moment is not this moment is impossible. So there's a price issue. At the end, it's very disappointing, but if you go to the supermarket, almost the price influence a little bit more. One thing, I'm not skeptical about organic movements. It's only harder than I thought. I'm an optimist. That's the reason I'm for 30 years now in Honduras, because you can be skeptical and very nihilistic about what's going on in the agriculture sector. But I think there are people working on it, and they're quite successful. Potato production is hard, including in the United States and in Europe. It's they use a lot of chemicals because production is too intensive. And other crops, I guess, cacao is becoming more organic, quite successful in Ecuador. We don't all cash crops, so it's an export market. Horticulture, on the other hand, we export a lot of horticulture products in Guatemala also to the United States, and they are high use of chemicals. and we're not changing that. If you're gonna pay a little bit more in whole foods, maybe you can export a little bit more organic crops to United States. But those short-term crops is a high investment. That's a challenge. I think redesigning those production systems with rotation, with other crops, that could be in solution. We sent in a proposal with Kansas State University doing this, but yeah, USA disappeared, so we don't have the money for this year. But we are rethinking about that project, do it by ourselves.
Hi, my name is Edith Mugeo. I'm an MPS in global development. And my background is in crop improvement and seed systems. And I was really impressed that the women reduced spraying, one for the ladies. And yet, looking at least at sub-Saharan Africa, the characteristics of smallholder farmers, you would find that women have less access to credit. They don't own the land. They have less access to extension services. And also, sometimes they cannot walk to the agro dealers to buy pesticides. So would you say that the willingness to adopt this technology or their willingness to reduce pesticide application was linked with lack of access to that resource to begin with? Maybe they didn't have the credit as much as the men did. So whenever somebody comes with an intervention that allows me not to spend more money, then I would be more willing to adopt that.
Yes and no. The main reason is they belong to a living group. They're now working for 25 years on that subject. So they are worried about what's going on in agriculture. And by definition, they don't like to use fungicide, pesticides. And they have their own land. It's a very empowered, when we look at about 600 members in there, not all of them, but a couple of them are quite successful. So extra credit, of course, if you don't use fungicide pesticides, maybe it's the easiest way to for restriction, but then you could buy illegal stuff that is worried. No, I mean, again, there's an assemblage, talking about assemblage, where there exists a discourse about being more sustainable, a little bit more organic. So they were open to this, but that was an alternative. They thought, hey, this will be helpful for me because I'm already trying to be organic. In difference with all those man groups, especially who work as contractor, it's making, I don't want to say making money, it's not the right word, trying to survive. I need some money at the end of this year because I have to send my kid to school. And if your potato crop is your main income, you don't want to risk that. And that's a very rational way of explaining. Then you have all the stuff around it, how it can take that. The rationality is not everything.
I have a, if you allow me, I'll get into, I want to take on this question a little bit. As somebody who has also been working in this space of promoting good technology for farmers, especially in Africa, I've been frustrated by this lack of adoption or disadoption. But 2 weeks ago, I had a little bit of an epiphany. I read a report that in the US, they've tried to move people from one carrier service for cell phone to another in a real life experiment where they could save 30% their cost. No, nothing else changes. You have cell phone number, and about I think 80% people say no. This led me to this feeling that there's something beyond sociology, economics. There's something about human psychology that's just resistance to change. Are we looking for answers in the wrong direction? Should we not really be inquiring on? People don't like change. Is there something you can comment on about just the reluctance for human beings to change behavior, whether there's incentives or not?
Yeah, you know, change behavior is very focused on the individual.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the individual that is uses impact.
Right.
It's the surrounding It defines who you are, how you produce. I think that is behavior change. All the economists are doing this moment. I think it's challenging, and it's a surrounding. I guess that is makes you how you are. You know.
Okay, hi. I'm going to change gears a little bit. I'm Dallas. I'm a master's student in global development. I had a question on your comment that you wanted to decouple the use of credit access with pesticide use. Can you talk a little bit more about the dynamic in Honduras and who the creditors are? Is this like government? Is this a government credit? Is this local banks? And if there's been any success in them maybe incentivizing use of less pesticides or different types of interventions?
Coupling of credit is logical step. You know, I don't think it's possible, but normally you get the credit from the association. They have there's no bank credit. You have some microfinance institutes, but agriculture they're not that strong. But normally you get from associations, and you have a contract. I buy. You give me the seeds and the fungicides. I give back my potato, and then what's the difference is your check. Yeah, exercise. So they're totally linked. So that associations have money that belong to all the members. They care about that money. So if I give you, you're a member, I give you the credit, you want to be sure that you give money back with good quality potatoes and enough potatoes. So they push you a certain way to come to buy the whole package. And then you have the technicians of that associations visiting your field, and you're going to talk. What about your potato? How's it going? Hey, there's something yellow on the leaf. What's going on? It was rainy last week. You have to apply because they are there giving technical advice to assure that they pay back the credit. But decoupling, that will be a challenge, except if you have a credit product focused on alternative organic potato production. But then you need a good design. And potato is cash crop. You know, it's in 3 months, you have a couple of $1,000. You don't have this coffee, you have to wait 3 years. Corn, like that's not a cash crop, it's potato product. You're not making money with corn. With beans you can, but neither.
Is there one more burning question? Okay. Hearing none, and let's thank Professor Sanders for his wonderful talk.